You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
From the Civic Media World Headquarters in Madison, Wisconsin, it's the Todd Alba Show. And now, pursuing truth wherever it may lead, here's your host, Todd Alba.
Across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and streaming worldwide on the Civic Media app. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Todd Alba, along with our outstanding producer, engineer, Mr. Aaron Zommers on the board. It is 6 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. Welcome into hour number 2 of the big broadcast here on a Monday, June 16th, 2025. It is a great day to be Wisconsinite. Sun trying to pop out here at the world headquarters in downtown Madison on State Street. Going to be sultry, muggy this week. Look for some rain Tuesday into Wednesday. Some storms might be strong. We'll keep you up to date on that. And then maybe 90 by the weekend. Glad to have you along. Many thanks to State Senator Kelda Royce for being here in hour number 1. One of the many things I appreciate about her is the fact you can ask her any. She's not one of these people that says, well, you gotta, only ask. No. She's like anything you want. No preconditions. And I love that. And I appreciated her honest answers to some difficult questions.
Absolutely. That is also something I very much appreciate about her. And I'm glad to have in my representative since I live here in Madison.
There you go. Also, we forgot to mention this in hour number 1. Because we had the big text to win trivia contest extraordinaire, and many people, including Mom, say, well, do people win these things? Yes, as a matter of fact. And on Friday, we had the big thing on the Bob Uecker tribute game in August. So we gave away, and it wasn't, I always forget, it's not just the news talk side. You have the music stations across Wisconsin as a part of Civic Media. So I wanted to let you know that Dawn up in beautiful Park Falls, who is listening to WCQM, our music station up there in Park Falls, Dawn was the winner on Friday of those Bob Uecker tickets to the Tribute of Life game ceremony back in coming up in August. So congratulations, Dawn. Thanks for listening to Civic Media. And also we had a couple of grand prize winners as well for those 2 big trips, and we're going to be notifying them soon. And as soon as we have their names, we'll release that as well. So thanks to everybody who played our Text to Win Scotty Summer Trivia Contest. Another one is coming up, I hear, in September. So be listening to that. But in the meantime, coming up this Friday, we're going to be going back to our free Friday ticket brewer giveaway. So stay tuned on Friday. We'll give you another opportunity to win Brewers tickets across the Civic Media Radio Network. Our next guest here at 9 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. You don't need to win a trivia contest to see his great work. All you need to do is log on to Wisconsin Watch, where you can find Tom Kircher and all the great reporters there at Wisconsin Watch. He joins us via StreamYard. Tom, thanks so very much for being with us.
Ted, you're welcome. I don't know if you allow bragging on a Monday, but
of course,
a quick brag.
Please.
I spent most of my news career has been reporting on politics, state government, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But for 17 years until recently, I also did some freelance reporting covering sports for the Associated Press, including Milwaukee Brewers games. And one claim to fame is that I once made Bob Uecker laugh.
Really? Now that must be hard to do, maybe.
Don't you think? I mean, he's a super, super funny guy. You see professional comedians talk about how much they admire him, his humor. So yeah, I had a moment of pride when we were in the media elevator and he made a comment and I made a retort and he laughed. And I thought, wow, this will never happen to me again.
Now is this something we can share on the air?
It is not.
It is not. It is not something. Which is probably, if you talk to people that actually hung around Uecker off the air, many of the things that made Uecker laugh are not things we can necessarily share on the air.
Well, to be, yeah.
He had a great sense of humor.
Well, absolutely. He's super funny, great timing. And I could tell when I made the comment, he chuckled that he seemed to catch himself for a moment, like Wait a minute, I'm the funny guy. I'm not. You're not supposed to make me laugh.
Well, that's a great claim to fame.
Yeah, thank you,
You're
thank
a
you.
Renaissance man, Tom Kircher. Not only can you do great reporting, serious reporting, you can also make the late great Bob Uecker laugh and tell a great joke as well. That's fantastic. Tom, you were up in Wisconsin Dells this weekend. And at the Democratic State Convention there in the Dells, wrote a great piece on it entitled Wisconsin Democrats Search for Answers as Fear of Autocracy Galvanizes the Grassroots. So give us the lay of the land. We had State Senator Kelda Royce, Democrat, here last half hour.
Mhm.
Give us, first of all, just the serious side of this, because this terrible tragedy, this assassination of a city legislator and the attempted assassination of another and his wife happened over the weekend in next door Minnesota. It was reported that because of this and because there were Wisconsin legislators on the manifesto of this assassin, that security was upgraded at the Democratic Convention in the Dells. Did you notice that? Was that felt? What was the feel, the lay of the land up there?
Yeah, just a moment before I get into that, just to set the stage a little bit. I covered the Republican State Convention last month in the
Mhm.
Wausau area and took the approach of trying to interview rank and file party members about what was on their mind, as opposed to interviewing the elected folks. I took the same approach at the Democratic Convention. You're right. There was a little bit of a surreal feel in the sense that here we are at a resort in Lake Delton, a few miles from the water park
Mhm.
capital of the world, right? Just fun and frolic. And when I arrived about 3 o'clock Saturday, the first thing I noticed was outside of the convention center next to the resort area, um, there were several police officers in the front door and a car nearby. And then inside, periodically throughout the afternoon and evening, I would see an officer walk through, and that was, clearly an indication of what had happened in Minnesota.
Mhm. Yeah, sobering times for sure. Again, uh, you're a reporter's reporter, Tom, and out of all this tragedy, one of the things that I really admired was the local reporting, particularly the Minnesota Star Tribune and some of the WCCO staff. And I think just another example why we need great independent or like Wisconsin Watch or just great local reporters when times
Mhm.
are tough, when tragedies strike. There's really no better way than for people who are on these beats who can get to the facts right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more the better, right? The more
Mhm.
reporters you have to cover the field, so to speak, the more that have experience with the local scene makes a huge difference. And I think particularly an event like that, where the facts roll out in a messy way, it takes time to sort out what exactly happened. Was someone killed? Was someone injured? Was it a
Mhm.
gun? Where did it happen? Who was this person? So having reporters on the ground who have experience and can get as quickly as possible to the salient facts, just crucial.
All right, let's get to the more political interesting thing of the convention, and I'm talking about the Democrats elected a new chair. Of course, Ben Wickler, longtime chair, announced he would not run again. Said he wasn't going
Mhm.
to endorse anybody, and then 2 or 3 weeks ago he said, "Actually, no, check that. I'm actually going to endorse my number two guy or number one, however you want, my vice chair, Devin Remaker." Joe Zepecki, longtime communication strategist for Democrats, had already kind of announced and gotten a lot of endorsements. And then you had this guy, I believe his last name is Garcia, from the 3rd Congressional District, which was confusing to me because 3rd District Democrats have not done particularly well, but that guy threw his hat into the ring, and then all the chaos and fun ensued.
Mhm. Yeah, it's certainly Ben Wickler was got several warm receptions, several standing ovations. He spoke at different points on Saturday, and a lot of adulation for him. So you have to imagine that his endorsement of Devin Remaker, who used to be the executive director of the state party, had to carry a lot of weight with the delegates who are the ones who voted and chose the current chair.
So Devin Remiker comes through, and help me understand this, Tom, because I'm a former Republican. I guess Democrats do things different in a lot of regards, but I don't understand why they do this whole ranked choice voting. I like ranked choice voting when it comes to like electing people to elective office, but to me it was Democrats trying too hard. Oh, let's set an example. Ranked choice voting to elect a chair. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Was this confusing to you or attendees, or I don't know?
It's not something I get into very much. I know that they approved that change, I believe, in 2020, and this is the first time that there's been a challenge for chair. So it's the first time they've used that. I think it would be interesting to see what people felt about it. Whether they would want to keep it going forward. But I have to say that the focus of my work on the weekend was speaking to the rank and file delegates, and I don't get the sense that was high on their priority list. The chair election or who won, they had other thoughts in
Really?
mind.
So I was going to say the ranked choice wasn't high priority. I get that because I'm a political nerd and a goofball. But so you're telling me that who became chair wasn't as big a deal as other issues?
Well, what I did is I would just buttonhole delegates and other guests. Not everyone there was an official delegate. There were guests as well, and started off with simple questions. Why are you here? And what do you want to see the party do? And I was struck by, and clearly this has been a scientific sample, but in interviewing 8 or 10 of them, 3 of them, middle-aged people, said they were attending their state convention for the first time.
Wow.
One of them even said, this is the first time I've ever been politically active at all. And all 3 of them said that the reason that they took that step to come to the convention was their fear of President Trump threatening democracy. And that was echoed by another more veteran delegate from the Stevens Point area who's been to a lot of conventions, unlike those first 3 people. And he had the same take, that his primary purpose of wanting to come was to see what could be done to counter some of what's happening in Washington.
About a minute and a half left. Again, from an outsider, but as someone who ran internal party elections and worked in elected office on the Republican side, to me, Joe Zepecki, who's been on this show, is a great communicator and can do narrative well. I don't know Remiker. I've never talked to the guy. He does not seem to be the communicator that Joe Zepecki is, but clearly the delegates voting wanted him there. It seems odd to me, Tom, and this has been one of my frustrations with Democrats, is they're more concerned about the policy. Oh, we're very concerned about Donald Trump. Aren't we all? Or at least a lot of us are, including myself. But in order to defeat that, you have to have someone who has a good message. And it just seems weird to me that they weren't that concerned about who became chair. Like, well, it doesn't really matter. I think it does.
Yeah, and I don't want to give the wrong impression. I wouldn't say that the people I spoke to, the people I interviewed, say it didn't matter. It was just that they were there for a different reason. They were telling me, hey, we're very concerned about the state of democracy in the country, a shift toward autocracy, as some of them put it. And we want to get together and talk about how do we resist that. Certainly part of that is who's going to run the state party. But I think what was driving people to come to the convention, the ones I spoke to, was more the bigger picture.
Come back, talk more with Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch after this, and answer the age-old question, boxers or briefs? No. It's fact briefs. That's what it is. Fact briefs with Tom on the other side. Don't go anywhere. Okay. It's the Todd Hallball Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
Pursuing truth wherever it may lead and having fun doing it. Welcome back to the Todd Hallball Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Coming up after the bottom of the hour update, going to talk about Pollinator Month. Pollinator Month. That should be interesting. Looking forward to that. But right now, our guest from Wisconsin Watch is the great Tom Kircher, who was at the Democratic State Convention over the weekend. Tom had a couple of callers called in here. Says Tricia in Appleton called in. She was at the convention, and when she asked why they were using ranked choice voting, they told her it was a mandate from the DNC and that they were required to use it. That's I did not know that. I'm not sure. That's one person,
Did not know
anyways.
that either.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Call there from that individual. Any other before we get into the fact briefs? Anything else from the convention you wanted to wrap up on?
I think just one thought was that while there was agreement among the people I interviewed that their worry about the future of democracy was strong, that there wasn't a clear agreement on what to do. I mean, one of the people I interviewed said he wanted to see more active resistance, like the senator from California who was arrested last week, interrupting a news conference from Trump's Homeland Security director. He felt like that sort of action needs to happen more, but I'm not sure there's a consensus on that.
Interesting. All right, Tom. I love this part of the segment, the fact briefs. Tell us what this is and give us a couple, please.
Yeah, so Wisconsin Watch has a feature called Fact Briefs. We look at a claim that's made by a politician. We structure it in the form of a question that we answer yes or no, and they're done in 150 words. So
Love this.
the most recent one I did asked whether the typical public housing tenant in the United States stays in public housing for 12 years. Is that true or false?
All right. And do we
That
know?
statement was,
Go ahead.
so Congressman Glenn Grothman from the eastern Wisconsin said that the average stay in a public housing project is 12 years. So this is one of the cases where he's correct. If you look at an average, it actually is 12 years, but misleading in the sense that that doesn't represent the typical resident. The average considers people who stay very, very long, like the disabled and the elderly. They may stay many, many years. That's going to raise the average, of course. But the median, if you think about the more typical, it's 4 years. People who live in public housing projects, half of them stay for about 4 years, half of them stay for less.
This is fantastic reporting. The reason I chuckled when he mentioned Congressman Grothman's name is because I know Glenn from my years working in the state senate when he was a state senator. He's an intriguing, eclectic guy, but yes, Congressman Grothman is want to kind of select certain things, and I think this is just unfortunate, his statement. I'm so glad you've corrected this, because you look at the disabled or people who might not have the ability to get out of public housing versus, as you said, the median, where people, if you give them some help, they move on and get out of it in, what do you say, a median age of 4 years.
Yeah, again, what he said was accurate. It's just maybe needing a little more context so you don't get the wrong impression that the typical public housing tenant is staying 12 years when in fact the typical tenant is quite a bit less. Although some people would say 4 years is an awful long time too.
Right. Tom Kircher, next fact brief, please.
Mm-hmm. So another one we looked at is has to do with the big beautiful bill, as the president calls it, that's being debated still in Congress. And there were a couple claims from our Wisconsin lawmakers, Gwen Moore, the congresswoman from Milwaukee on the Democratic side, Ron Johnson, the Republican senator, both talked about how that bill is projected to add at least $2 trillion to the federal debt. And that's true. When we looked at the nonpartisan analysis from a number of different organizations, they all came up in the range of $2 to $3 trillion in debt over 10 years if that big, beautiful bill becomes law.
Very interesting. And so there's and it's fascinating. Gwen Moore and Ron Johnson, very two diametrically different people on the political spectrum, and for completely different reasons wanted to point this out, I would say.
Yeah, and I think we just wanted to weigh in this because there was a number of statements made that people who are supporting that bill believe it'll generate economic growth, that in fact there won't be additions to the debt, but that's that's an argument to be made, but that's not shown in the nonpartisan analyses that we looked at.
Always great to talk with you, Tom. Do you want to tease anything forward, stories that you're working on, either you or the great folks at Wisconsin Watch?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So as we did with the Republican state convention, we did produce several fact briefs out of that, and that's our plan for the Democratic convention as well. The one I've started to work on, I don't know the answer to, is there a rural county in Wisconsin where more than half of the residents receive SNAP food stamps?
Is there a county in Wisconsin where more than half the residents receive food stamps? That's very interesting. I would think we're talking about total population.
So the percentage, and I would just add that we're asking whether there's a rural county. A person might think that it's an urban county would be more
Right.
likely, but we're taking a look at whether there's actually a rural county in Wisconsin where more than half of the residents.
Can we say who made the claim yet?
Yeah, that was actually from the keynote speaker at the Democratic convention, Raphael Warnock, the U.S. Senator from Georgia. And so it was interesting to me whether it's accurate or not. So we're going to take a look.
So did he name the county, or he just said there was a county in Wisconsin?
He did name the county.
Really? Can we say who it is?
Sure. He said it was Menominee County. So
Wow.
we're going to try to find out if he's accurate about that.
That is, I can't now see. That's a tease, ladies and gentlemen. We'll find out from Tom Kircher next week.
Yeah.
Very good. And look at Wisconsin Watch. Thank you very much, Tom. Always appreciate you. Come on back.
You're welcome, Ted.
We're going to talk about Pollinator Month on the other side. Stay tuned for news, weather, and sports. It's Civic Media's Radio Network. Welcome back to the Town Hall Ball Show across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. 35 minutes now past the hour of 3 o'clock on this Monday, June 16th. Glad to have you along. Zommer's on the board. Joining us here live in studio, always love when that happens, we have Amy Barrilleaux, who is the Communications Director of Clean Wisconsin, to talk to us a little bit about Pollinator Month. Amy, first of all, thanks for stopping by. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
All things considered, doing well. It's almost summer. I was going to say springtime. As a guy who is affected by allergies, I'm not a fan of pollen, but I know it's very, very important to the ecology and environment around here. We're going to get into that in a minute. But first of all, tell us, Amy, a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a communications director, as you mentioned, for Clean Wisconsin. I'm originally from Louisiana, hence the very long Cajun last name that I have. And, I bring that kind of perspective up here when I communicate about, the natural issues of our state, our clean water, clean air, healthy landscapes. Louisiana's a big outdoor state, and so is Wisconsin, so they have that in common. And I just have to, make it through the winters. And then this time of year, this humidity outside, I'm totally fine with.
You feel right at home.
Yeah.
How long have you been up in Wisconsin?
I've been here for, I think, 14 years.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, I should be acclimated.
Now, it's very intriguing to me because Jacqueline, our human resource director here at Civic Media, she's also a native Louisianan.
Okay, now we have to meet.
You
have to figure out where she's from.
We'll introduce you. But neither one of you have that, what I would call a traditional Louisiana accent. Is that something that you lose when you come up north? She says when she goes back down home, it comes out. Right.
Yeah. I'm fixing to go home in a couple days, and it's already kind of starting to, I'm ready. Ready to slide back into that Louisiana, eat some crawfish and some crabs that my dad has, he's picking up tomorrow. So.
Right.
It comes out. It comes out. But when you're up here, you kind of rein it in a little bit.
LSU fan?
Oh, I went to LSU. So
Did you really?
I
did.
did.
Oh, very good. Jacqueline's a big, as I am, a college football fan, so she loves her Tigers.
Well, I'm going to have to meet this Jacqueline.
Yeah,
maybe I know her. I don't know.
You might. As they say, that's not why you're called. But it's fascinating nonetheless. So tell us a little bit about, for folks that don't know what Clean Wisconsin is, what is the organization, and what is their primary focus?
So Clean Wisconsin is the oldest environmental group in Wisconsin. We've been working since 1970 to protect Wisconsin's clean air, safe water, our land, and our climate. So that's a lot of things. That's our environment. It's all those things that we rely on to be safe and healthy and happy in Wisconsin. Back then, we were called Wisconsin's Environmental Decade because I think the thought was, in this decade of 1970s, we're going to figure out all of our environmental problems. But that didn't turn out that way. So we made the name change, I think maybe 15 years ago or a little longer, to Clean Wisconsin. But the way we work on environmental issues is to kind of attack it from all sides. So we do policy work, we take legal action against polluters, and then we also do a lot of advocacy, generally public advocacy, like what I'm doing right now.
We've had Tia Nelson, the daughter of former Wisconsin Governor and U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson, who was the founder of Earth Day. And, of course, here in Dane County, just across the lake here, we have Governor Nelson State Park. And Tia Nelson is very proud of the fact that her father worked in a bipartisan manner to create Earth Day. And she has continued that tradition. And I just think, again, these issues of the environment, of conservation, of the outdoors, they really shouldn't be a partisan issue because we all enjoy, as it turns out, clean air, clean water, et cetera.
And if you look at, I think one of our kind of biggest victories that we've worked on in the 1990s was protecting the Lower Wisconsin River, right? This place where many of us have canoed down it, not just the Wisconsin River, but like hundreds of acres around the Wisconsin River. And that was an enormous bipartisan effort to enact legislation to protect the Lower Wisconsin River. And now it's the longest wild or natural riverway in the Midwest. And so it's something that we can all be proud of and we can all use. And you're right, it's not about what side of the aisle you're on. It's about appreciating what we have.
We didn't plan this, but I appreciate you bringing up the Lower Wisconsin Riverway. I was just on it yesterday. I was kayaking with my younger godson and his parents, and I told him the story. And the quick version: my former boss, Dale Schultz, was considered a conservative Republican at the time. Spencer Black was considered a liberal Democrat, and they worked together to help co-author that legislation. Republican Governor Tommy Thompson signed it into law, and now this year celebrating 35 years of the Lower Wisconsin Riverway, so that my godson and his family and I could kayak down it yesterday, and it looks pretty close to what it was 100 years ago.
Yeah, and it's remarkable. And that kind of progress doesn't happen on one side of the aisle or the other. It has to be everybody coming together.
Yeah, correct. So tell us a little bit about what Pollinator Month is and why we should be concerned with it.
Well, Pollinator Month is just a moment to pause and to talk about what's going on with our pollinators and how to protect them. So probably when you and I were kids, we didn't think much about pollinators. Like there were bees around and you ran away from them or whatever. But around the late 90s, early 2000s, we started to see a huge decline in pollinator populations. In some areas, a 90% decline. And that is concerning when you think about one out of every 3 bites of food we take in the U.S. is because of pollinators. They made it happen. Our cranberries, our apples, our fruits and vegetables, all kinds of things, our nuts. And beyond just the human sort of self-centered look at pollinators, they are part of an important ecosystem, and they are telling us there's something wrong. And so we need to think about why they're disappearing and what we can do to make that situation better. And that's what the month is about.
We're speaking with Amy Barrilleaux, who is the communication director of Clean Wisconsin here on Pollinator Month. I think you bring up that point. Oftentimes, they go, well, it's just bees, or it's just honey. And it's so much more than that. When, as you said, it goes to our fruits and vegetables that if we don't care about our pollinators, a lot of things we enjoy could be gone. So talk to us, I guess, a little bit about what's the biggest endangerment right now. Is it the chemicals? What is it?
Well, it's a combination. Like everything, it's always a combination of things. But the big thing is habitat loss. So you have in Wisconsin, a lot of conventional agriculture, corn and soybeans, kind of moving in on habitat for pollinators, getting rid of some of those native pollinator flower species. And you have climate change, which is, of course, on small living creatures. They experience those changes a lot harder. And then you have the pesticides. So the rapid decline in pollinator, in pollinator numbers coincides with the rapid increase in a type of pesticide called neonicotinoids. It's a class of pesticides that are neurotoxins, and so they attack the nervous systems of insects. And as those pesticides kind of rolled out, starting in the late 90s to the early 2000s, within 10 years, you started to see, hive collapse. You started to see bees that didn't know where they were supposed to be going, couldn't communicate well. And in fact, there's been research here at UW-Madison showing that really, really low doses of these kinds of chemicals can mess up a bee's ability to find its food, to be social in the nest, all these kinds of things. So it's a lot of factors. This certain type of pesticide is one of those factors, but certainly every time you take away a flowering plant that they feed on, that's another factor.
Is this pesticide one that's particular to a certain agricultural product?
Well, it is in the sense that, so let's say you're a conventional corn grower in Wisconsin, you cannot choose to buy a seed that is not coated with neonicotinoids. So if you're like, I don't want to use this, you can't find that supply. So it is in that particular crop incredibly widespread. And then when the crop has it, every part of the plant contains the nicotinoid because it's been coated on the seeds. But it's also like household plants and pet collars and things, all kinds of household products that are supposed to be kind of insecticides. You'll find that in. And it also is on plants like fruits, nuts, berries, things like that. That's not a seed treatment, but it's sprayed on afterwards. So it's heavily used, I would say, all across the country, but especially here in Wisconsin.
Are there any proposals or legislation that you're aware of to cut back or eliminate this pesticide?
Well, some states have introduced legislation that's specifically about neonicotinoids. I think New York is one of them. I can't remember the other. But here in Wisconsin, there's been a bill introduced relatively recently, a pollinator package. And in that bill, it's really just a package of bills. One of them is about the DNR and not using neonicotinoids, or neonics for short, on their kind of plantings that they may do. So there's a lot of work going on. Clean Wisconsin is part of a neonic working group where we're bringing in farmers and experts from UW-Madison and elsewhere, and all kinds of folks from DATCAP, all kinds of people who are trying to solve this issue, because it's about, as we were talking about earlier, it's not just environmental groups say don't use this. We need everybody to kind of come together and be like, okay, this pesticide, number one, has been bad for pollinators, and number two, it doesn't appear to be totally effective in terms of increasing crop yield, so it may not be great to use from a financial standpoint for farmers. So how do we come together and address this problem? So this neonic working group is just getting off the ground in Wisconsin to try to solve this issue.
And are you aware of any research or science that shows these neonic, I guess we call them for short, passing on to humans that may eat these foods or whatever? I mean, years ago, people laughed at former Democratic U.S. Senator Russ Feingold when he was going after RBGH hormones and things in dairy. And, back in 2007, on a whim, I started drinking Organic Valley milk that doesn't have that crap in it. And by golly, it turns out, no, Todd isn't lactose intolerant. If you just drink the organic milk, that solves a lot.
Really?
A lot of the problem. So I'm a big believer that a lot of these chemicals or pesticides that in our foods are having an effect on us as humans. Do you find that? Is there any research that shows it with this?
Yeah, well, in fact, we just posted a research brief on our website at Clean Wisconsin that talks about that. So, when you put something on food, you're going to get some of it. You're going to ingest some of it. Also, most of the neonicotinoid that is, coating that seed, only about 10% of it actually in real life gets taken up by the plant. And the rest of it ends up in the soil and in drinking water. So what we've got the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection studies how much of these pesticides are getting into water wells in Wisconsin. And they're finding that, some of it is showing up in water wells, particularly in the Central Sands region of the state, where there's a lot of agriculture and there's a pretty shallow aquifer system. So more agrochemicals tend to show up in those drinking water wells. And there haven't been a lot of human studies, because it was always like, well, we have this new we have this new pesticide and it's great. And it goes after bugs, and don't worry about it. Was kind of the thing. So there haven't been a lot of human health studies, but there's starting to become evidence that fish are being impacted, birds in areas where these pesticides have been used are being impacted, and then on animal studies that are meant to kind of replicate what high-level exposure to humans would be. There's been some evidence of sort of a wide variety of health harms that could come from being exposed to high levels of these chemicals.
We're up against the clock. Can you come back after 2 minutes here? We'll wrap up.
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. Amy Barrilleaux is with us. She is the communication director of Clean Wisconsin. Talk about perhaps what we can do as Wisconsinites to help out our pollinators. Don't go anywhere. We're listening to the Todd Allball Show across Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Welcome back to the Todd Allball Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. Glad to have you along. Where it's 8 minutes before the hour of 4 o'clock at the top of the hour. ABC or CBS News, depending upon which of our great stations you're listening to. Weather update, and then a great Mike Clemens. Yes, I know my colleagues. Our great sports reporter, Mike Clemens, will be in with a sports report following the Brewers. Got a nice win on Father's Day. Our own Luke Mathers was there with his dad watching the Brewers beat the Cardinals. And the Brewers getting ready for a very important series against the Cubs this week at AmFam Field. Clemens is all over that, and we'll bring it to us. And then Maggie Dawn and the Maggie Dawn Show from 4 until 6. Pete Schwaba and Nightlight, 6 until 8. Native Roots Radio with Robert Pilot, and then it is Rick Smith Across America. Another great lineup here at Civic Media. Right now, we're talking to Amy Barrilleaux here at the desk, the communications director for Clean Wisconsin during Pollinator Month. Amy, thanks for coming back for the second segment here. Appreciate that. Yeah. Again, you said over the break, we don't want to make this all about the neonics, but I just find this fascinating that this one chemical has been so devastating to our pollinators. Before we move on from that, is it, I at least think of pollinators as bees. Are there other insects or species that pollinate beyond the honeybee?
Oh, sure. And the honeybee is not a native pollinator, so it's from Africa. We have about 400 species of native pollinators in Wisconsin, and that includes bumblebees. It includes the rusty-patched bumblebee, which was the first pollinator or the first insect ever listed as a federally endangered species. So when we were kids, they were everywhere, and now they're almost nowhere. Yeah. So there are all kinds of pollinators and butterflies and many other types of insects out there that we're trying to protect.
All right. Let's move on to some of the solutions here. Things that we're not all scientists. We don't all belong to groups like Clean Wisconsin. What can us as just Wisconsinites all across the state do in our own little world to help pollinators?
Well, if you have a house and you have a yard, set aside a spot of that yard for pollinator-friendly habitat. So that means you're not mowing, you're not disturbing, you have some native Wisconsin flowers that pollinators like that you plant there. And that is giving those bees and butterflies and other insects a home. Because one thing I didn't realize until I started working with Clean Wisconsin and talking to folks was that these bumblebees, their homes are usually underground little tunnels. And so they're under the leaves, and they're there in the springtime, and they just need that cover to make their nests and rebuild. And when we start pulling all those leaves out and putting our mulch in and all that kind of thing, we disturb that natural process. So, keeping a part of your yard that's intentional is great. And then when you go to buy plants, ask, were these plants treated with pesticides? Because the one heartbreaking thing I think about is, well, I bought these plants at, the big box store, and I see these bees feeding on them, and am I hurting the bees with these plants or not? And so it's important to try to figure out, and that's kind of a hard ask in a big box store. So if you can buy your plants locally at the farmer's market or other places that are selling native pollinator plants, that's the best way to go.
Yeah, and a great shout out to one of our great sponsors here at Civic Media, Kopke's Greenhouse down in the town of Dunn, outside of Oregon. It comes up with the farmer's market here in Madison. They're a great local greenhouse and sells native pollinator species and plants there. So you're absolutely right. Let's talk a little bit about I know you have a list here of things that, what we're trying to say, Todd, that we intake as humans. We talked about milk before, but the age old, but question is, should I spend the extra money to buy organic? Does it matter in cases like this?
Yes. So if you're worried about neonicotinoids being on your food, so again, I mentioned berries, nuts, corn. These are some of the foods that have been tested to show that on occasion they exceed the health limit for neonicotinoid substances on them. Buy organic, because they're not going to have those. I mentioned that conventional corn seed is coated with neonics. Organic corn seed is not. So typically organic produce does not use this particular type of pesticide. So if you're worried about pesticides and chemicals, then that's a good way to go. Still, though, we've got the goal of helping conventional farmers to use less of these harmful products as well.
About a minute and a half left. Other things that we could do across Wisconsin besides setting a portion of our yard or garden aside?
Well, I think, wow.
Let me
That's
ask.
a good question.
Well, no, I guess I didn't ask it very well. It's my fault. A lot of people, we treat our lawns because, we don't like the dandelions. We spray. Is that harming the pollinators to have beautiful lawns?
Let me give you an example. So I talked to my dad in Louisiana, and he's saying, man, I cannot, he likes to garden, vegetable garden. He's like, I cannot get my squash to grow. There are no bees to pollinate the squash. And I thought about it. I'm like, you really spray your tomatoes a lot with insecticides. And so when you use insecticides in your yard, especially these neonics, they stay in every part of the plant. And then as the pollinators feed from plant to plant, you just have this sort of harm spreading around your garden. So you need to be careful. If you do need to use some kind of insecticide or other pesticide, follow the package directions. Don't think more is better.
Right.
We tend to think that.
Right, yeah.
It's not better.
It's not better. Very quickly, where can folks find you at Clean Wisconsin? Website or socials?
Cleanwisconsin.org. We're also on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and those sorts of places.
Well, I encourage people to check it out. I've learned something today. Amy Barrilleaux, Comms Director at Clean Wisconsin. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, really a pleasure. I'll have you back soon. It is Pollinator Month, so all of us should do what we can to help out our pollinators across the great state of Wisconsin. Many thanks to State Senator Kelda Royce for being here today, talking a little bit about Joint Finance Committee. Tom Kircher from Wisconsin Watch and his great reporting. And as we said, Amy Barrilleaux here, the Communications Director at Clean Wisconsin on Pollinator Month. Mr. Zauber is doing a great job on the board. Stay tuned. Maggie Dawn is next. Tomorrow, join us, talk about rural emergency medical services all across the state of Wisconsin, a little on fusion voting as well. Thank you all for being here. Todd Albaugh say whatever you're fighting for, whatever you believe in, do not give up. Keep banging your drum. We'll see you tomorrow.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.